Good morning. Everybody's still asleep, I guess. My name is Chris Cowan. I work with the County of Wayne. This morning we're going to talk about a program from the state that will be a success, unlike some other programs and stuff like that. Basically, you can find out that Wayne County was selected a while back as a pilot, and one of my experiences with working with the state WIC office was for the last 15 years, I've been a pilot for them on several different projects. So being only an hour away from Raleigh, they could drive down there, whatever, and they knew that I would support them, whatever they type of need and stuff like that. So, with that, Josephine?
So good morning, I'm Josephine Cialone, and I'm the nutrition director in the Division of Public Health, and I oversee the WIC program. And I don't know how many of you know this, but we've been for the past several years working on developing a new computer system for our WIC program. So have any of you heard about that? It's called Crossroads, so some of you have, good. So Crossroads has been in the making for quite some time. We had several phases of the project. We're funded by the feds, by USDA, Food and Nutrition Services, and we're one of three what they call state agency models. As you can imagine, developing a new computer system is quite expensive, and rather than every state developing a new computer system, the feds funded 3 state agency models that could be transferred to other states once they were rolled out and known to be working. And so we're one of 3. There's one that's been rolled out in the Mountain Plains area, which is targeted towards mid-sized states. One that was called Spirit, which was rolled out in the West, and that was developed by Indian tribal organizations, targeted towards smaller states and programs. And then ours is the largest. It's a 4-state consortium who's developing it. So Alabama, North Carolina, West Virginia, and Virginia. And that's been a real challenge to work with, meet the needs of 4 states. North Carolina is the largest state, and Crossroads will be the system that the feds put out there for larger states. We're one of the larger programs in the country, certainly not as big as Texas, California, and New York, but after that, we're a pretty large program. So this program would be transferred after that. The system will manage all aspects of the WIC program, both at the state level and the local level. All the reporting that we have to do to the feds, all the reporting that locals have to do to the state will be done. All the clinic services and all the food delivery, and we'll have multiple modules. I think some of you who know about the WIC program might know that we have grocery stores that we contract with. There'll be both a participant portal and a vendor or grocery store portal for them to get into the system, and rather than do paperwork when they either get to clinic or for their application to become a WIC vendor, they'll be able to do that online. And then there'll be different levels of approval by locals and state for those processes. It interfaces with multiple other systems, and we continue to build interfaces. We'll be interfacing with NC Fast because we can use Medicaid and SNAP eligibility as a proxy for WIC eligibility, so it'll do an interface. It interfaces with CNDS because we use that as our participant ID when we roll out Crossroads. And it has both standard reporting and lots of ad hoc reporting capabilities. But it really does manage all of the operations, and we're pretty excited about that. I'm going to turn it over. I'm not an IT expert, I'm a program expert, and that's why I felt the need to bring in some IT expertise to help us help other local government or local agencies roll out. And Chris has been just wonderful to help do that. So I'm going to turn it over to him.
The way I'm approaching today's presentation basically is talking from a county perspective, what works, what don't. Because talking about a prior presentation, that's one thing I see as a shortfall. They're really not working locally. If there are issues, what is the solution? You know, what is the workaround and stuff like that, so. With that, they came out with some computer requirements. They say Windows 7, 32 or 64-bit, but I'll be honest, it still will work on XP. It still works. This is what they're recommending. And keep this in mind, a lot of these recommendations are from the vendor, the designer, the programmer. It is not from the state. Matter of fact, to get like computers or something from the state or permission to buy using their funds, you have to submit a request to the state for permission. Well, they'll look at some things here. Does it meet this list? If it don't, they're going to deny it. Or you can buy it yourself type of deal. Because I've been through this, and I'll talk about it in a second. Talk about 2 gigs of memory, 4 gigs recommended, USB 2.0 or later. Display, that's what they want right here. One of the issues I questioned from the beginning, seeing there, was about the video card. About a year and a half ago, I needed 4 new computers for my 2 remote sites. And it had 4 gig of memory on board, had a video card built in, and so like this. Normal computer, not a problem. I submitted it up there, and they looked up. It doesn't have 512 megabit dedicated video. So in all honesty, to get it approved, I had to have them add a card in for $50 per machine to get the machines. So I did or whatever. But when you look at this, and you talk to some other people, they scratch your head. Why much video? Now, I don't have a lot of experience working with the system, but a lot of it, to be honest, is a website and it works great. There's no problem. But that's just what they felt. And they may be planning for the future possibly. Needs to have these other programs on the computer itself. One of the biggest things to get the program working, you need .NET 4.0. That must be installed in the system. Otherwise, you'll never get to the application. Connectivity. This is a little bit more consuming than NC Fast. If I recall right, they said for every 10 users, it's 1 megabyte. Well, if you took 1 megabyte, this is 4 users only. But as you know, when you go into a website, you're not constantly doing things, so it's sporadic type of things and stuff like this. Talk about some actual testing. I was lucky last week to have DRM come down with one of Josephine's consultants, and we actually got the system all set up, got the scanner attached, got the signature pad, I got a printer installed, which I'll talk about shortly. And the consultant went through doing actual records, and we were capturing data. See, that's what I talk about, where they came down and they actually did stuff. We got a lot of good data, and to me, seeing how it worked, captured data to me didn't mean nothing. I just want to see that consultant go through every screen, do everything. How did it respond to me? It responded very well, no problem at all, especially at our main site. It was faster than it could be. Now let me explain to you about Wayne County and its internet setup. We use a product called Fat Pipe, which basically is you have one output going to the box from your network, and then you have as many internet lines in the back. Well, we have 3 internet circuits. We have 2 of them that are from Time Warner, the 50 by 5s, and we also have 1 Metro Ethernet through ITS. That's a 100 by 100. During the prior session, Randy made a comment about Wayne County being number 1. That's why, because we have the speed. We felt it was very important for our users to have this capacity to be able to go out. Main site, it flew like crazy. We got to the remote site, when they were in the application, it flew. Great, no problems at all. But however, you're going to see as I'm talking about the logging into the site, what happens, and I'll explain more about that. That was a little bit different, because those are only 10 by 1s, and they're actually VPN into us with ASAs, and they're fully tunneled. So if they wanted to get to the state, they would actually come to my system, and then go to the state, come back to me, and then go back to them. So there's a little bit of delay in there. One of the things that the state will need to know is the IP addresses they expect your machines to come from. A lot of the data they've already collected from other things like NC Fast, things like this. So hypothetically, if you go home and you bring up the URL for the website, you'll never get to it unless your IP address has been added to their database for access through their firewalls. Scanning, the model that the state provided me with was a Brother. Works very good. I love it because you can just hit certain buttons. You put your flash drive on the side, it'll scan directly to it. The only thing I saw that they're going to add in the future, anybody use NC Fast for scanning yet, attachments? Can you scan directly into NC Fast? What do you got to do? That's one of the things. I wish it had the flexibility of scanning directly into it and having a paper clip, just like an email. That's something it currently does not have. Okay? But is it a shortfall? No. Because going through our testing, which is actually the first time I saw the system work perfectly and flawlessly, so I knew I did my job right. It scanned right into the document up there. Boom. It was there, quick and fast. You can actually name it whatever you want to call it up there. You can put comments about it, and if you want to, you can even delete it then. But you can't, just like you've got someone an email from a doctor that had a prescription for certain formula or something like this, you couldn't attach it. But how could you do that? The way I actually figured that out was you have it in your email, print it out, you got paper copy. Now you can go to this machine and do it. That is a workaround that you could actually do. Signature pad, we're using a Topaz model. If you're familiar with the way the WIC system currently works, on their manual feed tray, they put these little slips in there, and it prints out, and that's what the client manually signs for their food instrument. Well, in the future, whenever you go live with this, you will no longer use that manual feed tray. You're actually, when they come time for the food stamps, it prints out, and then right there, they just sign for it instantly on the screen once they agree with it. And it's so cool when they're signing that pad, you're actually seeing it go in the application. Works great. Printing. How many people here use a product called RPM, Remote Print Manager? Guess what? That's gone. Totally gone. I personally kind of liked it because with the current Mickers, nobody had the printer installed on their computer at all. Nobody did. When they were in the green screen or whatever, in Raleigh, whatever, they type it in, they hit enter, it go through the internet, come through the pipe, hit my print server, boom, I sent it wherever it needed to go. Really restricted. The new model is you have to install the printer directly on the machine, okay? Now there is a password on the machine that supposedly once you do a flash upgrade to the device, you can't send your emails to it, things like this, supposedly, unless you know this password. But this is the key thing about the application. You can't just call the printer anything you want. When your site is defined for your area, I don't know how they're going to define a name. Let's use the word printer 5. If that's what they put in the site up there, on locally, you have to call it printer 5. Because when the print job comes down, it goes right through that computer, it looks at printers, and it's looking for printer 5. And if it's there, it'll print to it. If it doesn't, that's what they say, it goes into the black hole. They don't know what happens to the job, hypothetically, locally. But that's just one of those things. Now, if you're like me, my main site actually has 2 WIC printers right there. Right in proximity or whatever. Certain users use this one, certain users use this one. The way I look at it, even though it's the same name, I will install it with the same name, but since it's IP-based, talking to the printer, I'll just assign the IP address for those users over here, we'll go to this one and over here. And then as a backup, I'll still install the other IP address on all the machines. So if printer number 1 dies, I just have to go to those devices, change the port on it, so it goes out through that one. So that's one of the biggest things that changed. No more print servers type of deal. I'm going to talk about virtualization, but I think this is a good point talking about that because when I went to the States a few months back for a little show and tell it all works, and they show me local printers. Well, I'm virtualized with Citrix. We have a ZenApp desktop pushed out. I'm thinking, how in the world, if you log in over here, how can I tell you to go to this printer and this one over here? Well, you can't do it right now. But in 2015, you're going to find out they are going to do some piloting for that, and everything goes right, we'll be doing that. But she didn't hear this. I already used the application in the virtual world. I know it works. Now, all the accessories, not for sure of yet, but at least you can still use the application. That's all you need.
That's why we picked Chris as our pilot, because he's just personal.
Swipe cards, one of the things they're going to move toward is they're actually going to have like a kiosk of some type. You'll have a computer out there where they're going to have a little card that has their numbers on there. When they come in to check in, poof, they just swipe in. It puts them into the dashboard, correct? Okay, and they're basically checked in. And then the WIC staff will be able to go to the dashboard, see who's in the waiting room. And then it goes to the clerks, and then next step is going to the nutritionist or wherever it needs to go to type of deal. That's where they're going to use. And one of the things about the dashboard is that Josephine was just telling me is, if they're actually a nutritionist and it's in their queue, they just have to click on their record or their name and it'll bring up their record automatically. One of the things they're looking at doing is a medical equipment interface like scales, blood pressure, you know, that type of deal. We haven't done no testing of that, but that's one of the goals because they're trying to remove errors from going into the record. Sometimes it's easier to transpose stuff or whatever. Hand scanners are talking about that breastfeeding equipment they issue out. This might be easier for tracking inventory. Your person who's responsible for that, they'll just scan it into the record or whatever. They know it's been issued out. So I guess even with formula, they'll be able to do the same thing. Other equipment, Apple, not supported. They won't even touch that. The vendor won't even touch Apple at this time at all. So you can't use an iPad or anything like that. Tablets, that's the only thing they said they will support if it's Windows based. If it's Google or something like this, they're not going to support it. If you get it to work, it's great, but they're not going to support it. Virtual desktop, I mentioned about that, not until 2015. That's when they're hoping to make a change request if everything goes right to get to work in virtual environments. They know everything works, interface-wise, backwards and forward. And maybe I'll be lucky enough and I already have it tested out and I can tell them, yes, it already works. So we'll find out. Logging into Crossroads, one of the things you must do is take that website and you must put it in the trusted sites for those machines. And one way I did that was I created an Active Directory policy. I added the site to it and I published it just to the WIC organizational unit. And everybody got it automatically, which is good. So you don't have to visit every machine. When they get in there to log in, of course, everything's tied to other things. Josephine mentioned earlier, CNDS, then we have NCID, and of course, you know, we're talking to these other systems. NCID stays up every day, right? It has its peak, right? So, just other things, you know, there's other systems they're talking to. So when they get there, they just log in with their ID. Well, the first thing it's going to do, anybody familiar with Silverlight? Okay, my understanding, this is what her staff had told me, XBAT is very similar to Silverlight. It's actually going to download some files so they can actually run the application. And the bad thing about it, I wish it kind of would download one time for that computer, but it doesn't. It goes into each user's profile. I mean, that's, I don't want to be careful, but nothing you can do about it. It's about 75 megabytes in size. And as you can see in this particular case, it's 67 megabytes. And what it does when you launch the application and you log into it, it's checking for updates, always. If you don't need updates, it carries you on. If you need updates, it will download the files as necessary. Okay, and then of course, if you prompted it, it'll run on there, because something got trained your users to hit. And then you're finally going to get down to this area right here, where you actually select, and most times it'll be the third choice, your clinic. I didn't open it up, but it's also for remote sites. So that's how you would define it. Because if you're familiar with the current WIC system, it uses what they call RTIs, remote terminal IDs. So when they're on the WIC screen, they type in certain numbers, boom, they're assigned to that area. That's the way that's going to control this. One of the things I kind of hope that with printers, it'd be kind of cool in some cases if they would have maybe a fourth choice to this for printers in the future. So if you chose the main site and there's two printers associated, you can choose your printer right then and there. So you can rotate around very easily which one you wanted to go to. Once you're in there, this is what the application actually looks like. And actually, you'd be surprised, it's actually pretty fast. You'd actually have a whole bunch of drop downs and stuff like this. But I thought what was cool about this program, I didn't find out till last week. You see on the bottom right, it says the word tab, there's a little slider. Move the slider button, all these groups move and change. And it depends upon your access rights, what tabs or panels you see and stuff. I thought that was one of the coolest things. Okay, one of the things talking about bandwidth and downloading the XBAT files. At a remote site, it flew, it updated files, not a problem at all. Went to one of our remote sites, I brought up, hey, they're closed today, let's go out there, let's do some testing. We went out there and did some testing with it, and we brought it up, they logged in, it was checking for files, had to download it. Well, out there, we're a 10x1 circuit, everything's tunneled. It took about 4 minutes to get the files, 4 minutes. And they finally got to the login screen and stuff like this, and she was flying, moving all her stuff around. So I thought, let me try something. We had another computer, I powered it up. Double-clicked on the link for that, and so like this, it started to do a download. And later they're saying, oh, boy, this is slowed down. Well, it did. So I let it go for another minute, just being slow. And then I hit the X, canceled out of it. Oh, good, it's fast again. So this is one thing I actually found out in this program. If you're at a small remote site, if someone's later in the morning launching it, it could affect other users on your network out there. It's a potential with that thing right there. So the bottom line is, if they all got there 8 o'clock in the morning, have them both launch it, 4 or 5 minutes later they got it, they're going to be good the rest of the day. I don't think this application is going to be one of those that you have to log off 3 times a day. I don't think it's going to have those kind of issues. Because actually when you're using the application and they're adding a new client in there, it actually has tabs on the left or choices, and you have to go through each one of them when you're entering client data. I thought that was really cool, so you know exactly where you were at in the application. One thing I've been working with Josephine and some of her staff, they've actually hired a person who's developing the help desk for this whole system. So me and him occasionally are conversing back and forward, and he's writing the manuals so that their WIC staff will know what to do. Now, one of the things that the state's a little concerned with is that where Randy's at, where I'm at, we have IT staff to support them. There's some counties that are so small, they contract out. And that's the ones they're a little bit worried about. So there may be times you'll see on the listserv where, hey, a call for help may go out and say, hey, can you go out and help them out or something like this? Or provide advice or something like that. And that's where we come back as a group to help out this program. Just say, help them, students will do whatever they can. They have consultants throughout. But again, they're not techies or nothing like us and stuff. But overall, in a nutshell, is it a hard program? It's actually pretty simple. And it does work. That's one of the good things about this one right here. When they were down last week doing the bandwidth testing, I think they're thinking back a year ago with NC Fast, when they start coming out with all those weekly reports and stuff like this, where some counties were slow. And they supposedly helped those counties out and figure out what the issues were, so their numbers would actually withdraw and stuff like that. So that's why they came down to us and they ran some things on their end. And it worked pretty good, as far as I'm concerned. So with that, are there any questions? Yes?
Does everything work as standard?
Yes. Nobody's a power user. Yeah, as long as you've already installed, as an administrator, all the programs, the standard user, we no problems at all. Even the updates, yes, because it goes right into their profile and they have control over that. So it'll be no problem. There is a few things that they have told me about, and they're going to provide me some information. I'll send it out to all you guys. So you may see emails coming from me sometimes. When you're actually scanning, it goes into a certain folder, so it doesn't go away. And they talked about maybe you want to clean the cache on that. It does put an image in their profile and stuff like that. So for security or whatever type of deal, you might want to do it. You may want to add it to a login script or in their startup when they turn the machine on to clean it out, or if they log off. However you want to handle it locally and stuff like that. So, yes, sir.
Where are the county supposed to be fully?
I'm sorry, what was your question again?
When are the counties supposed to be fully?
All the counties?
Say that, I'm sorry.
When are all the counties supposed to be?
They'll be implemented in 2014. We were supposed to go to pilot in July. We had to make a call in June. The system really was, we were still in UAT, the system wasn't ready. And we had learned from others not to roll the system out prematurely. I think that we've done a whole lot more testing. We're going to have to keep on doing some add-ons over time, but we have put forward a schedule which is hopefully will be approved in the next week or so, and then we'll announce pilot and we'll announce the rollout schedule. So local health departments and we have a couple WIC programs that aren't in health departments. I feel they'll have about 6 months lead time knowing when their rollout date is. And our plan is that the staff will come to training for a week. We have a training site on Dorothy Hicks campus. And then will convert their data out of the old system over that weekend and during that week when they're closed down. And then they'll start up on that Monday. And our plan is to have at least a program staff person at every full-time site during the first week of rollout just in case, a week of training, and we're going to go from a system that has 3 screens, basically, to certify an issue to a WIC participant, to a system where you don't use any paper anymore. Half of our records are on paper. We feel as though we have to have someone there, should someone have forgotten something they learned the week prior, just to cue them and help them, or if something crazy happens, we can help them with the workaround. So that's our plan at this point.
Randy?
Question on the technology being used, as far as things about. It does look like .NET click once, and I guess this is the question, did you notice how chatty it was? Because I know we use Compass Pilot as a click once application, and of course it can be very chatty because it's designed for the server to be local. And this may be more vendor question, but just from your perspective on how chatty it was across the line with that client running locally and then back in.
It really did, because we're running Wireshark there, so we're watching the data on one screen, and then that she was doing all the stuff on this other screen and stuff. It didn't seem to be that bad, going back and talking to it. It needed, when it did, but then it was done. So I was very happy with that. And just so you know, after all our experiences with NC Fast, and I was approached about being a pilot for Wayne County for the entire system for the state, that's one of the things I told her is that our experience on our own listserv, I says, we don't want Crossroads to be like that. And that's one thing Josephine has done very well with her staff. I'm surprised when I went for a meeting, they're in a big boardroom, there was about everybody you could think of was there. And they answered any question I had about it, which was very good and stuff like that. They're very open, they want to make it a success. But it's also up to us. And I think we're very good at our side, but sometimes the one who's developing it, are they willing to work with us and stuff? So. Yes, sir.
And Andre, and all this, why did you VPN back in from your notification?
That's the way we've always done our traffic, and plus our phones are voice over IP, so everything tunnels back. It's like we want to be able to really watch our users at our remote sites too. We don't have a lot of them, but it's always been our tradition since we've had this running 2004, 2005. They've always VPN'd in and stuff like that. The other caveat, if you weren't VPN'd in, you need to probably have a static IP on your box there, because that's something that the state will need to know so they can trust you to allow you into those websites and stuff. Because I know when I initially got into the user acceptance training site, that's what we're using for our testing. It took about a day to get all the kinks worked out in the firewall so we can get in there and actually get the stuff. So, but it's an option, and actually I've been toying with that too. That's why in December I'm actually going to the 2 remote sites when they're closed with the staff that works that site. I'm going to spend half a day, and I want them to go through the UAT, plus I want to show them more about the scanner, the signature pad. I want them to understand how to disconnect. Now pretty much almost everybody will have a signature pad. There'll be 1 or 2 that don't. Scanners, there'll be a few less, but like our WIC director, she doesn't want one per se, but she'll have a regular power cord and a USB cable. Software is installed on hers. So all she's got to do is plug it in, power it on, boom, it's there. So it's portable between our remote sites. They only have 1 scanner per. So it's no problem. Normally maybe the clerk will do all the scanning. I don't know. That's up to them how they define their own process. But then if that person's too busy or not here, the nutritionist can take it and put it on her desk and stuff. So, yes?
And that, Richard, now on the remote locations, we've got one that has a static IP, one that doesn't. The RPM, you see, you go back to the local printer on that.
Locally on the
remote
machine,
location.
so you as administrator would have to install the printer out there so it's available to all users out there that would see it, and it must be a certain name. You can't just call anything you want to. And that's something I know that they will do as they do each county. I don't think they're gonna make them all the same name, I don't know. But they may ask you, what do you want to call the printer? And then they'll go into their setup, and just 2 places, they'll put the name of it and a password on there. And talking with Chris Batista, I don't know if any of you guys know him at the state, whenever we actually get ready to go live, we gotta change to MICRs, the type of checks they print. And the way they're gonna do that now is I'll be getting a flash drive, I'll plug into my computer, launch a program, then I'll put the IP address of that printer and it'll flash it automatically. I can do them all from my desk. That's one of the things they're gonna change. Where before, they used to sometimes send it down through RPM, they connect in and flash it. RPM's gonna be gone, for them at least. Now, is the old system gonna be totally gone right away? Probably not. I think it's gonna be a lot of read-only still in the old
We'll leave it on read-only. We're gonna convert the data, but people will not, or local users won't be able to go in and certify and issue benefits out of the old system. They'll be able to view everything if they need to. Our plan is, and we've tested this multiple times, is to convert all the active records, so not records, the program's been around for 40 years, so we're not converting all our records, but converting active records into Crossroads from HSIS. And part of the challenge is, I'll say, is that there's a whole lot more data in Crossroads than there is in HSIS because we have a lot on paper now. So the first time the user logs on and looks up an existing record, they will have to complete, some data. We put in fillers so they know where that is in order to move forward, because we don't even have all the required fields in our current system that need to be converted to save a screen, say, in Crossroads. So, the first few months, as participants who have been previously, we use the old system, come in, we know that clinics will go a little slower, and we're trying to do some things to relieve them of some workload to kind of compensate for that during those first few months. We hope that the lack of paper will help speed things along eventually as well.
And one of the things I thought was cool talking about their system, the way it is when you go to each screen or whatever, they have an asterisk by certain fields. That only tells them that's a required field. Other ones they don't have to fill in or something like this. But one thing during our testing we found out, they have this nice place where you click on and see like a height weight chart, like if they're overweight or not or something like this. When we clicked on it, we got no data back. But as we went through the process of the other screens, we went back to it, the data showed out there, graphed out perfectly right then, because some other screens needed some data based that on. So, but that was cool. They had to grab, they could print it out or whatever they want to, if they needed to, and stuff. So,
When you were talking about the scanning of documents and attaching it to the client's information.
Yes.
What was your comment about if you had an email?
well, a lot of times you say, well, I have a document I want to attach to a record, but it's not a piece of paper. You just print it out, because I don't know, a light came on last week, so I just printed it out, now I got paper, I'm gonna put it in the scanner, whoop, scan it right into the record.
So you couldn't scan someone using digital copy?
No, there's no way of attachment, that's the key thing. There's no way of attaching it. That's the bottom line, so you have to have paper in hand. It's one of these things, to be honest, going backwards, but in all honesty, unlike DSS, because I know we have about 10 million scanned records, I think it is. It's about almost 2 terabytes right now of scanned images. So WIC is not like that. They're expecting just a couple of documents, like a prescription slip or something like this to come in. It'll be very minuscule.
I would say that in clinic, the items that staff routinely scan and have to save are prescriptions from physicians. And they generally, they have to come on paper because they have to be signed. So those are paper documents. And then for the occasional participant who doesn't work, isn't on Medicaid, isn't on TANF or on SNAP, they have to do a type of declared income, basically saying they have no income, and sign an affidavit, and that'll be scanned in as well. So we don't require that staff, when they come in for income eligibility, keep copies of all the documentation. That's not a requirement for WIC. They have to view it, they have to document what they viewed, but they don't actually have to keep it. So we don't feel that the scanning there'll be a lot of scanned documents in the system. But it's up to the locals how they implement it.
So will the income and everything, like the consent program pull over?
Yeah, it'll pull over because when you use CND, now I'm not a techie, so I'll say that. But when I've gone into the system, so you use the participant has a CNDS, which is the same as SNAP and Medicaid. And there's a point on the application where you go in and It asks you if the participant is on SNAP or TANF or all using CNDS or food stamp, SNAP, TANF, or Medicaid. And if the participant says they're on Medicaid, let's just say, you click a button. You click and it'll have a V comes up and it'll say verify. And when you click on that V, it goes out and searches and comes back and verifies. I'd say the other nice thing about it is it's a family eligibility, and right now we do individual eligibility. It's a family-based record. And in WIC, you know, if the family's on SNAP, the whole family's eligible, so it automatically makes everybody income eligible and they're all
So
verified.
you won't have to, it's just 30 numbers that you have to verify by.
We're not using socials.
It's the EIS.
EIS.
I'm not for sure.
The CNDS, yes.
And the way it works with the record, if they're a brand new client to come in, it creates an internal WIC number. But then when you get to the second screen, it actually goes to CNDS. It takes like your last name, first name, date of birth, male or female, and goes out there and it'll come back with options. And you select the one it is. And then their temporary number becomes the CNDS number. It automatically overwrites that. And if they don't exist, it will create a CNDS record out there.
So is it pulling from the NC-FAST, food stamp name?
Well, it's all together. That's one of the things you talk about healthcare.gov. One of the problems is it's talking to so many other systems. And this does too. And that's one of the things you have to think of. I talked about logging in. It talks to NCID. Is it always up? No. Is CNDS always up? Maybe not. So that's one of the things with that. But it doesn't do a lot of work in that system. Like she says, for eligibility, they just check respective boxes and it actually goes out there and look. It even has a combination box with drop down, so if they're like presumptive, if they're not in any of those, you can just automatically choose presumptive and allow them to have it for a period of time.
That's good because I know they used to have duplicate numbers sometimes.
So one of the things we've tried to do with, you know, in our current system, we don't have to use CNDS. But we've gone ahead and over the past year, had all the participants in our current system move to CNDS so we can sort of clean up existing participant records. So when they convert, all those participants will already have a CNDS. Because if we waited till they converted in Crossroads, that meant not only would people have to fill in extra data the first time a participant came in who was already on the program, but they'd have to go out and find a CNDS, and we just thought it would be more than they needed to do. So we went ahead and implemented that now. And we look at the records, and I would say it's not required, we can't require it, but I would say most local agencies have been very proactive. And we run reports and kind of call them up and say, no, we see some participants without a CNDS, why is that? And so we've been cleaning up the records as we go along to just do everything we can ahead of time. So the first day, there's as little to do except to get used to what is a very big and new system.
Randy?
This is more of a statement / observation / question. And it's more directed to DHHS and from an IT initiative as a whole. But looking at the different technologies that you use to deploy this, especially when we're talking about NC-FAST, using scanners, that nobody raised their hand. I'm just interested in knowing the strategic strategy, or strategic. But anyway, the plan of, and the NC-FAST is going to be deployed web-based and use this control from an NC-FAST perspective. WIC is going to be deployed and it's going to use an entirely different, infrastructure and technology base. I'm just, like I said, it's an observation of curiosity why there's not a consistent message. And I don't know, maybe that is because of federal funding and the way
Well,
that comes down.
I think that our department is very aware of that. And I think when we started on the Crossroads system, we got our first, our planning grant in 2006 or 7, and NC-FAST wasn't as far along as it is now. So, and we were in a different department. We were in the same department, different administration. So I think at that point, both systems were being moved along and it was parallel. I certainly agree with you. We've heard that before. why wouldn't we, out of one department, use, pretty much be comparable? I think in hindsight, we always recognize what we could have done differently. So I recognize what you're saying, but they were sort of developed in parallel. And, you know, NC Fast got pushed out, well, you all know that more than anybody, this year. And we had already been kind of far along and had, you know, with these big federal grants, you have to go out on RFP, you have to, so I agree with you, what you're saying, and recognize it. I think hopefully we'll do better in the future. Sure. Sure.
Hey, I'm Rob Maynard from the North Carolina Department of Insurance, but I was formerly with Josephine from pretty much the onset of the WIC program and the Crossroads Consortium. And the process was very laborious and iterative during the functional requirements definition phase, and getting all 4 states that are a member of the consortium to agree on what time of day it was, much less what color the paint on the ceiling was. So the program and the model as it exists today is a result of the very laborious and iterative functional requirements definition sessions that we had to go through, with each independent member of the consortium having their best interest in mind. So while granted North Carolina was the lead state in this consortium, we had a bigger voice, but we still had to agree with the consortium on other aspects regarding the technical infrastructure and what was best supported across multiple different platforms. Some states were easier to work with than others, but to Josephine's credit and her predecessor Alice, they did a fantastic job navigating those very treacherous waters and coming up with a model that would best integrate with NC Fast when it was ready for prime time, or any of the other data feeds that come into and go out of the Crossroads product. But it was very challenging. They did, I said the vendor did look for the most supported but not bleeding edge technologies that would be common across counties. And where are you all from? Macon County. And I assume most everybody in here is from the counties. The consideration from the very beginning on technology adoption and somebody mentioning shatter across the wire, that was a huge consideration from the very beginning, insofar as recognizing that some counties are better sourced than others as far as capacity and technology and things along those lines. Plus, we were dealing with dated equipment, offline models, and things of that nature. So a tremendous amount of front-end work went into ensuring that the counties were receiving a model that would best meet the needs first of the participants, but also not be burdensome and increase the workload over paper versus, making your lives easier versus making it difficult. The very beginning is going to be bumpy, and we recognize that, or they recognize that, but once you start realizing the benefit of getting these participants the services they need in a much more timely fashion, it'll really pay off.
Thanks for the history. I forget about one. I think I put it out of my mind. It was a long iterative process.
Oh, got 2 questions. We'll start in the right.
So once you get implemented, you know the work you're ready to run, you get an indication of what the day-to-day and goals of work are going to be. What are we expecting to do, or
We don't plan on, because really, the technology really is out of the box. Using a standard scanner works on a machine. The Topaz signature pad works perfect. It should be very little. And if you're on a machine that has a printer with printer 5 on it, and it's supposed to print to that ticker, it should print. It probably should be no different tomorrow versus what you're doing today. That's the way to put it. I see very little. Because if you have problems with the micker, you're going to get involved anyways. So I don't see any issues with that at all. Yes?
between now and go live, the state having plans to identify a troubleshooting process and signing contracts?
So, I have trouble hearing, I'm sorry.
I was asking about a troubleshooting process in case things don't go well.
There is.
Yes.
With NC Fast,
Yes.
They have right contacts working in their hands, or they want to.
Yeah, we, actually, that's part of our pilot plan and the establishment of help desk support is what is it we'll need to make sure that we have people in place to resolve any issues that might come up. So we're looking at, we don't, in our branch, we're a program, we're more the program staff, have a large IT staff. We'll probably have some contract staff available who's knowledgeable in the project, who can do some troubleshooting with us if that should come up. We're hopeful that with good pilot and good documentation for getting agencies set up, we won't have too many technical problems, but we are aware that could happen. So, we hope never to have to, shut down or go back to our legacy system, because that would be not a great thing after we converted our data. But we have some backup plans should the system, like a contingency plan, should we not be able, for example, we have some problems with the system. We're coming up with some contingency plans for local users to keep services going during that interim period.
One thing I want to add on, talking about, help or whatever, like one thing I've done with every software, be it the Topaz, the scanner, I wrote a little document, a how-to document that I'm supplying the state. I'm going to try to go through it and remove things that point toward me, but to give you an idea how to install stuff. So if you give it to a lower level technician and you're using the same model of scanner or Topaz, it'll be simple. That's one of the things about that. We're trying to build all these things that they can answer questions. Because one of the concerns I mentioned early on is the small counties. The larger counties, you do have some technical expertise. You can handle through most things, and it's very simple that they're going to use. Last week, early part, I was privy to a document that actually showed me the UAT site, the way everything worked, and goes through different firewalls, load balancing stuff. They do have a lot of redundancy built in when it goes through one area to another, which I thought was really good.
And I would say that any suggestions that you have, not to say they all can be met, on ways that we can be poised to be successful, that's our goal, I'm open to hearing about. And, we will do our best to work, particularly with our DIRM staff, to get things in place to best support the rollout. So if you have learned from other experiences about the type of person or an organizational structure that would help best support what you do and help our local users roll out smoothly, I am wide open to hearing that. And we'll add it to our discussions about our help desk and our support of the rollout. So I welcome your ideas.
That's the brother scanner, the only scanner you can use. We only use Fujitsu.
I'm not sure. I know there's a couple
We've
models.
tested a few. We purchased these for locals because they were small and desk
Very
space seemed
lightweight.
to be an issue. They were light, so not everybody wanted a scanner or needed one. They could be unplugged and moved. So that's why we purchased them. It works with other scanners. We haven't tested every scanner out on the market.
We just have a lot of them. We use 6130.
Yeah, I retested it with several scanners. We chose this one, as I said, because it was small and light and worked.
And that's one of the things talking about, since it's like a four-state consortium, they have the contractor out doing certain things, they're gonna say, this means like the video, I think it's more than can be, but I can't do anything about it, that's what I
I
do.
wanted to address it. I think the reason, and I'm not a techie, I don't know, I know enough to be dangerous, really, is we have in the health arena, and they're not up yet in the UAT environment, so Chris would have seen these video clips that show like usual routine things that happen in clinic, like determining income eligibility should somebody have a lapse and how to do it. But especially right after training, you learn so much. At some point, you can, you stop taking it in. And so for the key activities, we have these video clips. They're very general. There's a lot of state configuration in the system, but generally they would lead someone through the required fields and what to press when. for our routine activities, and those are video streams. So that may be why we have that higher capacity need, I don't know. But I know we've been viewing them, commenting on them. They're gonna come as part of the system to us as a state, and then down the road, we'll be able to edit them and modify them to the North Carolina configuration. So the screens will look slightly different because the video clips come with kind of the generic screen. And then in the setup on the state side, you know, sometimes some of the fields disappear because North Carolina doesn't use it, like social security number. We're not using it, so it'll disappear off our screens, but it'll show up in Alabama's screen. So on the video clips, it'll be the generic system, but I think it'll be enough to get people through whatever task they're trying to get through.
One of the few things that I've heard our users say that is good about the CPAS is the job aid. Would there be things like the job aid in the crossroads?
And so I'm going to, a job aid is like,
Basically, they've got like hundreds of little icons you can click on, like how to subscribe or how to.
yeah, there's a pretty robust help feature where you can, you know, key in the topic. We're also preparing little laminated cards with kind of the key activities, the same ones as those video clips were. Kind of to cue people back through what is the usual like path in most clinics of the client and how to basically successfully certify an issue benefits. Because that's the bottom line what our clients come in for, and that's where all the required fields are. So we're also coming up with little help aids, and actually Wayne County is going to help look at those. We're doing a lot ahead of time. Once we announce our rollout, we're going to do a lot to notify our participants 3 months ahead that, you know, it's coming to your county. Be patient with us. You know, just because we want them to walk into clinic that day, not poised to maybe wait a little longer, but poised to be patient. Should the user, you know, when they come in, be a little slower than usual, and the service not be exactly the way they've encountered it. So we're trying to do some preemptive strikes as much as we can. Again, any ideas you have, I welcome.
One final question, anybody?
Did you say it was not supported on a virtual desktop?
Currently not.
Okay.
That's because of the vendor or whatever, they won't support it, make sure it all works, they haven't tested it. But
Okay.
personally, I run Citrix desktops, or actually, it's a ZenApp published desktop. I can move in the app, do things. Now, I haven't tried it with getting scanners to work, we haven't got that far in our own environment anyways. That will probably happen, but it's predicting right now, 2015, and maybe a little later, but hopefully before then, our own system, we plan on having external devices working through our environment. So if I can get in there, maybe I can get our consultant to run through it and did the scan document show up where it needs to? Did a signature added and stuff like that? Okay. One thing I'm very excited about, to me, this is an application that's going to be a success. The one thing I really love about it is that the state is willing to work with us locally. That's why you just heard Josephine say, you have ideas, they're willing to it. By the way, I know 2 of our staff members are on our list server. One of them has commented before Chris Batista about a few things. So if you haven't, just put in a subject, mention word crossroads, and I guarantee they're going to see that title. If you have a question, they're going to answer it, or maybe I can answer it if possible. Okay, I want to thank everybody for
Thank you, and
listening.
thanks Chris for all the support.